On today's video, we're going to be looking at solving more linear equations. You should have your notes that are titled, How Many MP3s Do I Have? So we start with Terry, Trudy, Tom, and Trevor have challenged their friends with this riddle. Terry said, if you add 150 to the number of MP3 downloads Tom has, and then double that number and finally divide it by 3, you have the number of MP3 downloads I have. Trudy said, if you take the number of MP3 downloads Tom has and subtract 30 and multiply the difference by 5 and finally divide that product by 4, the result will be the number of MP3 downloads I have. And finally, Trevor says, well, if you take twice the number of MP3 downloads Tom has, add 30, multiply the sum by 4, and finally divide the product by 3, you will have the number of MP3 downloads I have. The first question says, do you have enough information to determine how many MP3 downloads each person has? For questions like this, we need to know what's the total number of downloads before we can do any work. So that answers 1 and 2. Number 3 says, define a variable for the number of MP3 downloads Tom has, and then write expressions for the number each of the other people has. So I'm going to use x because T in math kind of looks like a plus sign. So we say x equals number of Tom downloads. Terry's would be 2 times the quantity x plus 150, all divided by 3. Trudy's is 5 times the quantity x minus 30, all divided by 4. And Trevor's is 4 times the quantity 2x plus 30, all divided by 3. Number 4 says, suppose Tom has 150 MP3 downloads. Determine how many MP3 downloads each person has. So we're going to say that x equals 150 downloads. For Terry, we just substitute 150 into the x place, and we get 200 downloads. For Trudy, we substitute 150 into the x place, and we get 150 downloads. And for Trevor, we substitute 150 into the x place, and we get 440 downloads. Number 5, what if Terry and Trevor have the same number of MP3 downloads? How many MP3 downloads would each person have? So Terry equals Trevor. We're going to set their expressions equal to each other. And the scariest part about this equation is the denominator of 3. So we're dividing by 3 on both. We do the inverse operation of multiplying by 3 to both sides. When I do this, that denominator goes away and I'm left with my numerators. Now I can distribute these out and think about this first one as 2 groups of x plus 150. So 2 groups of x would be 2x, and 2 groups of 150 is 300. On the other side of the equation, we have 4 times 2x, so that's 4 groups of 2x, which is 8x. And then 4 groups of 30, which is 120. Now we have x's on both sides of the equation, and we don't like that. Our easiest way of going about getting rid of one of the x's would be to subtract 2x from both sides, leaving me with 300 equals 6x plus 120. My goal is to get x all by itself on one side of the equation. Right now I'm adding 120 to the 6x, so I'm going to subtract 120 from both sides, leaving me with 180 equals 6x. So if 6x's equal 180, I divide by 6 to find out that 1x equals 30. So if X is 30 downloads, that's Tom's downloads. I take Terry's expression and substitute the 30 for X, and I find out that Terry has 120 downloads. Then I take Trudy's expression and substitute 30 for the value of X, and determine that Trudy has 0 downloads. And finally, I take Trevor's number, which is equal to Terry's, so it's just 120 downloads. Make sure that you have all the notes written and you can answer the 3 questions provided.